Hi, I'm Jay, and today we're looking at the 1978 Roger Corman creature feature, Piranha. Piranha was the first film where Joe Dante got full directorial control. He had shared directing duties on one previous film, Hollywood Boulevard, but prior to that he was really mostly a film editor for Roger Corman's New World Pictures. And Joe Dante started off with a bang. Piranha was a huge financial success, spawning both a direct sequel as well as multiple remakes. Piranha was basically Joe Dante's directorial debut. He had generally been a film editor up until that point. He had shared directorial duties on one previous film, Hollywood Boulevard, but this is really where he finally got full control.
There is a creature alive today who has survived millions of years of evolution without change, without passion.
It's no secret that Piranha was really just a ripoff of Jaws at the end of the day, but ripoffs were kind of what Roger Corman was known for. He really had a strategy of if a concept makes money, you make a much lower budget version of it, get it out there as quickly as possible, and really just strike while the iron's hot. But what really separated the way Roger Corman did things from a lot of other studios is he had a real eye for talent. A lot of noteworthy filmmakers got their start at New World Pictures under Corman, most notably James Cameron, who actually got his first directing gig on the sequel to this very movie.
When the movie Jaws first opened, it created a sensation. And shark sightings increased by the thousands in all the vast and unknown depths of the ocean. How could there have been only one?
Piranha actually came out this same summer as Jaws 2, which Universal Pictures saw as a bit of a problem as it really was a fairly blatant Jaws ripoff. They were actually planning to sue New World Pictures to keep them from releasing Piranha, but of all people, Steven Spielberg saw the movie and had praise for it, and he actually convinced Universal to allow them to release it. And of course, this led on to a future very good relationship between Steven Spielberg and Joe Dante, as they worked together on several films, from the Twilight Zone movie to the Gremlins franchise.
Who could have imagined they were there? Who could have predicted they would attack? And now, who would survive? Piranha, they're here.
No! Did you think? Stay back!
Piranha, they're hungry.
I thoroughly enjoyed Piranha. It's a movie that knows exactly what it is and has a lot of fun within its own limitations. It's everything I'm looking for in an exploitation B movie. Piranha is sitting at a 69% positive rating from critics and a 42% positive rating from general audiences on Rotten Tomatoes. Let's take a look at what a few of the critics have to say. Nick Shager from Lessons of Darkness says, of all the late 70s, early 80s Jaws knockoffs, none balanced tongue-in-cheek humor with out-and-out gore as deftly as Joe Dante's Piranha. Scott Weinberg of FearNet says, essentially, Piranha is the best example of how to do a B-movie knockoff. And Michael Gerske of MovieWeb says, Joe Dante's mild masterpiece of a creature feature is more than a knockoff. The movie opens with a couple of hikers going through the woods at night when they come upon a gated-off military research base. Now, of course, as this is a movie, they decide to sneak in, take a look around. Once they get inside, they find a man-made reservoir, and the woman immediately wants to strip off and go skinny dipping. Now, the man has a perfectly reasonable, sane response to this, which is, hey, what if this is a sewage treatment plant or something? Obviously, you should be concerned about toxic chemicals in these waters, but that's sort of setting the tone for what this movie is going to be. It recognizes the inherent silliness in these types of films, and it sort of revels in it without ever being disrespectful or saying that this sort of thing is bad. It just has fun with the tropes. The woman, of course, brushes off his perfectly reasonable statement, and she pushes him in the water, giggling, before she finishes stripping and jumps in alongside him. They swim around for a moment, and the man says, "Hey, I think something bit me." And rather than saying, "Whoa, we need to get out of this water right now," she says, "Oh, cut it out. There's no way. Nothing bit you. Let's race." And she just wants to keep playing in the water.
Race with the deep end. Something bit me.
So of course, and I know this is going to come as a huge surprise to you, both of them end up getting eaten by something in the water. Now, I don't want to spoil anything, but the title of the film might give away what got them here. This scene perfectly sets the tone of the film. We are watching a B-movie creature flick that is fully aware of all the tropes and plans to lean into them satirically. It goes so far that it borders on actual spoof, but I don't think it ever crosses that line, and it does stay planted firmly in the horror side. The film score that starts playing after this scene is surprisingly somber. This sad music plays that really changes the tone from the kind of silly that we had a moment ago to very dark. And I think the movie wants to use this to remind you, you are still watching a horror film. But they never want it to get too dark. They never want you to forget to have fun while you're watching. The second the credits are done, we move to the next visual gag, where someone is playing the Jaws arcade game in this movie that is a blatant Jaws ripoff. And this turns out to be our heroine and female lead, Maggie. Maggie's played by Heather Menzies, and she's a skip tracer that's been hired to find our two missing hikers from the opening scene. This introduction is great. We learn quite a bit about her. We learn that she's extremely absent-minded, but she's also very good at her job of tracking people down. We're also told that this is her first time tracking anyone outside of the city.
I found the bigamist, didn't I?
Right,
And the bad check lady, Mrs. Pilgrim?
right.
And I found Mo Schneider.
You're 3 times, but those were all in town. You're strictly a city kid, and these kids are way out in the
I
boonies.
can find anything, Earl. I'm 2/3 bloodhound. I told you that when you hired me. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, my ticket! I could have sworn I put it in my pocket with my ticket.
So we're set up for a bit of a fish out of water story, no pun intended, following Maggie through the woods here, tracking down the hikers. Shortly after that, we're introduced to our other lead character, Paul. Paul's played by veteran actor Bradford Dillman, and he's mostly characterized as a grumpy alcoholic. In this introductory scene, we're really seeing him purchase several bottles of alcohol from what appears to be some sort of neighbor delivering the booze for him. When we move back to Maggie, she is driving through the mountains. She's just bouncing up and down, seems to have no real control over the Jeep, once again selling the fact that she's absent-minded and out of her element here. But it's a pretty funny scene. She has no idea what she's doing. She obviously is damaging her Jeep as she has to stop, opens up the hood, all sorts of steam and smoke is coming out. Just more good characterization. Joe Dante knows how to introduce likable, interesting characters. Soon, Maggie manages to arrive at Paul's cabin, and she begins questioning him about the missing hikers. Now, we get to find out a little bit more that she is pretty good at her job. We know she's done her research. She's fully aware of who Paul is, doesn't have to ask him to introduce himself or anything. She has a good idea that he's somebody that should know these woods well, so she's asking him quite a few questions. Now, Paul, being a grumpy drunk, doesn't want anything to do with her. He's rude. He tries to chase her out.
They said it was a big mountain.
You're right, it is.
Well, I figured they may have followed along the river. Are there any places to swim near here?
Well,
If they drowned, they'd be swept down at the dam, you see. So you're starting at the wrong end.
Boy, you're the wrong end, all right. Look, am I interrupting something? I mean, this is kind of important.
Hey, you cool your jets, lady. I didn't axe murder your young couple. I can't help you. I haven't seen them.
Are there any other shacks up here?
Cabins. This is a cabin.
Well, are there any more of them? Any places where they might be holed up?
Now, eventually, he does let slide that, well, there's an abandoned military research base around here somewhere. Her response is immediately, oh, you're going to take me there. His response is immediately, oh, no, I'm not. And then in the very next scene, he's just in the Jeep with her.
Come on, let's go.
Go where?
You're taking me up there.
Oh, no, I'm not.
You think I'm wasting my time here, don't you?
No! I think you're wasting my time!
I really enjoy the quick cut here that's sort of lampooning the meet cute you might expect in this sort of movie. Just setting two people up to work together over the absolute thinnest of reasons. They don't even really bother giving us a reason with Maggie and Paul. She just says, you're coming, he says, I'm not, and then he is with her. Now, of course, later on, he gets more directly involved in the story, you'll see, but I love that they don't even bother here. He just has to tag along because she's a pushy woman and apparently he goes with it. Once at the Army Research Base, they immediately find evidence that our two hikers had been there. They find their belongings. They also find some interesting evidence of weird genetic experiments on fish and other aquatic creatures. There is this absurd stop-motion bipedal fish creature that walks by in the background multiple times, or in the foreground, anywhere that the characters don't see it. And this just never pays off. This thing is just there for a little bit of extra weirdness in this genetic research lab. Now, apparently, they intended to have a giant version of this creature attack at the very end of the movie, and they just either ran out of budget or Roger Corman ran away with part of the budget, whatever story you believe there. But I actually really like the fact that this doesn't pay off in the end, and it's just this odd world building that you see in this one scene and then is never even mentioned again. Maggie decides to drain the reservoir because she suspects that the hikers' bodies might be found in the water. And of course, just 1 or 2 seconds too late, as soon as she pulls the lever to drain it, the scientist comes barreling in to try to stop them. And instead of having a rational discussion saying, whoa, whoa, don't do that, that's dangerous, he wildly screams and attacks them with a stick. The scientist is played by Kevin McCarthy, who had a long and very successful career. Probably most importantly, he played the bad guy in the Weird Al masterpiece, UHF.
You idiot! Can't you do anything I tell you to do? Does this look like a number 2 pencil?
No, I just thought that
You thought? I don't pay you to think?
But Dad...
Shut up!
After knocking out that scientist, our heroes decide to go check out the drained reservoir and look for the bodies of those hikers.
Before the Army took it over. Probably drains underground into the river.
Uh-oh.
Now, they do find some picked clean dog bones in there. I imagine those are probably supposed to be the hikers and they just think it's a dog, but that's not made clear. But more importantly, they apparently left this scientist totally untied, and they left the car keys in the Jeep. So while they're down in the reservoir, the scientist gets up and steals their car. Now, he doesn't make it real far because he is badly concussed from getting hit in the back of the head with that booze-filled canteen, and he almost immediately crashes. Paul makes an extremely on-the-nose comment about the scientist being indestructible, and then the next scene he's just tied up in a bed, and now he's able to properly play the mad scientist role, start speaking in riddles and not really clearly answering any questions they ask, just vaguely hinting at danger.
You let them out!
Let who out?
You okay?
Doc,
What's he doing?
You don't know what you've done. Untie me! Untie me, I've got...
Question is what you've done, mister.
What you... You don't know. They breed like flies. There'll be no way to stop them.
Would you talk sense, damn it? Now, what about those kids?
I can't tell you. I can't tell you. Oh, Mother of God, they'll kill us. They'll kill all of us.
Okay, mister, listen. They're gonna sweat it out of you in town.
I assumed here that they had tied him to a bed back in this army research facility. We're not given any sort of context into them going anywhere or even how they could get anywhere because their Jeep was crashed. So this is really the only large plot hole in this entire movie that actually bothers me. And I'm sure there are others that I just didn't notice, but this one seemed very blatant and a little bit jarring because I go through this whole scene assuming that they are in the army base, even though they seem a little bit overly familiar with the layout of the place.
I'm gonna have to go to work come September. Yeah. My daughter in saddle shoes.
And then at the very end, after all this talking, going in multiple rooms, seemingly setting up for the night, we finally get an exterior shot and we find out they're somehow back at Paul's cabin. I really don't know how they got there. I don't think the filmmakers did either. I don't think there is an explanation. I doubt they carried the severely injured scientist after his car accident miles down the road. Maggie is snooping through Paul's stuff a bit, and this is a nice character touch. I always appreciate any more character building they decide to do. And she finds a picture of his daughter. The two of them discuss his circumstances a little bit. We find out that his daughter's currently at a summer camp down the river on the other side of the dam. We also learn that she is afraid of the water. Now, this entire scene is basically a blatant exposition dump, but it's written really well. It flows extremely naturally, so you don't feel like you're getting exposition thrown at you. This is excellent script writing, and this is not something that should be taken for granted. After this, we are introduced to the summer camp, where we meet some other important characters to the film. Now, by far my favorite character we meet here is the camp director, Mr. Dumont, played by actor and director Paul Bartel, best known for directing Death Race 2000. He is hilarious in this movie. He plays an absolute nightmare of a camp director who seems dead set on not allowing anyone to have any fun, and he really just runs the camp like it's a military boot camp or something. We also meet Paul's daughter, Susie, who does have a large role to play, but it's largely as the person that Paul is trying to save, although they do give her some good moments where she gets to actually make a difference herself. She's not purely just something for Paul to be saving. So far, the pacing of Piranha has been nearly perfect. Absolutely textbook screenwriting. This was actually John Sayles' first screenwriting gig, so he doesn't try to do anything too fancy. He's really following all the rules, and it serves this film perfectly. He actually went on to have a very successful screenwriting career after this. He even worked with Joe Dante again on his werewolf classic, The Howling. But in this film, the pacing is spot on. And almost at precisely 30 minutes, we get our first look at our creatures in action. Paul's friend that was delivering the booze to him earlier on is sitting on his dock fishing with his dog. Now, this man should have won an Oscar for playing drunk because it's about the most convincing drunk acting I've ever seen. I half suspect that they got the actor smashed before they filmed it.
In front of a trolley car. Trolley car ran over his tail. It's surprising. He turned around, and the trolley car... I'm telling you a story. A trolley car ran over his head.
So while he's fishing with his dog, the mutant killer man-eating piranhas show up and begin chomping down on his legs that he has dipped in the water.
You didn't like the story? You want me to tell you the story? Maybe you didn't get the point. You get soft in the head?
So, of course, he better be drunk for this scene because they need some reason he wasn't quick-witted enough to just pull his legs out of the water once things start biting them. The underwater camera shows the piranhas at work, and it instantly becomes obvious why piranhas were such a perfect choice for this low-budget Jaws ripoff. Simulating the piranhas biting people, the special effects necessary, is extremely easy. These are basically just rubber fish on sticks that they sort of shake back and forth in front of people and release some red food dye in the water. Now you can laugh at how basic this is, but the effect is generally very good. If you're not freeze framing here and zooming in and watching in slow motion, it does look like these are fish just consistently biting people.
Hey, my friend. Number one, what happened to those kids?
Maggie and Paul are floating down the river with Dr. Hoke, and he finally starts talking some sense and giving some actual answers about what exactly is going on. He explains that some genetically engineered piranhas have been let loose in the river now thanks to Maggie draining the reservoir, and that they better not touch the water. Now, at first, they don't seem to believe him, but they quickly come upon Paul's friend's body, who has nothing but bone beneath his knees, and it becomes clear immediately that Dr. Hoke is telling the truth. We're officially in the second act of this B-movie creature feature, so we are contractually obligated to have a kill every 5 or so minutes. So we get a quick scene where a man's out fishing with his son. He gets his hand stuck in the water trying to untangle a net or something.
You bit? Ouch! Ow! Dad! Stay back! Stay back! Dad!
Where he is then somehow pulled underwater by the piranhas and eaten, with his son managing to balance on top of the flipped over boat. We then cut back to our leads as Dr. Hoke goes into a lot more detail about what exactly is going on. They were paid by the government to develop these super piranhas for the purpose of taking over the rivers in Vietnam. Now, once Vietnam ended, it was supposed to be canceled. They were supposed to kill the fish. They tried to poison the fish, but not all of them died. And the ones that survived the poison began breeding and eating their own dead to stay alive, and Dr. Hoke just kept running his experiments. So he has essentially just created super-powered, genetically engineered piranhas that can survive in almost any environment: saltwater, freshwater, warm water, cold water, and are apparently poison-resistant as well. Now we are given our ticking clock that really pushes the story forward in the second act of the film. Paul discovers that he needs to stop the piranhas from getting to the other side of the dam. So they have to reach the dam before it's drained, allowing the piranhas to reach the summer camp where his daughter is on the other side. Now they come upon that flipped over raft with that child on it whose father was just eaten by piranhas. And the scene is hysterical. Dr. Hoke makes the heroic decision to jump into the water to save this child before he sinks in, but he saves maybe 2 seconds by jumping in that water ahead of the raft to get to the kid and help him onto the raft. It accomplishes nothing. Very much reminds me of that scene in Dante's Peak where the grandma jumps into the acidic boiling water to pull the boat the last couple of feet when the boat was already going just as fast, and she literally does nothing. She just kills herself. Now, the difference between Dante's Peak and Piranha is I'm pretty sure Joe Dante was completely aware of how foolish this was and how silly it looked, and it was all very tongue-in-cheek, whereas Dante's Peak thought it was just a heroic sacrifice. Shortly after getting the kid on the raft, they pull Dr. Hoke himself back into the raft. He's not doing so well. He dies seconds later, and he is just trailing his blood into the water. They keep his dead body on the raft with them for some reason, and this leads to one of the more ridiculous sequences in the film. Dr. Hoke's blood in the water sends the piranhas that are immediately below them into a frenzy, and they start attacking the ropes and tearing them up that are holding the raft together. So this log raft is literally being dismantled underneath them by the piranhas, and they decide to push Dr. Hoke into the water, logically, to get the weight off of there. And the kid is hilarious in this scene. The kid is just whining about, no, they're gonna eat him just like they did my daddy.
Let go, son. No, we gotta get rid of him.
No, that's what happened to my daddy. Let go.
This is another part where I'm not sure if it was meant to be funny, but to me, this kid's reaction, his ADR, is just hilarious through this entire scene. But they manage to get by. They make these wild leaps to the bank to escape the piranhas. And then Paul's like, there's no time. I have to get to the dam as quickly as possible. So he runs seemingly 50 feet, and then he's just at the dam. And running had to be 3 times faster than taking that raft. You gotta wonder why he didn't jump off the raft like a quarter mile sooner and just sprint there as fast as he could. He would have shaved a whole lot of time off this trip. But he does, surprisingly, make it in time. You never expect him to make it in time for something like this. You have to let the piranhas get through so the movie can continue. But he actually reaches the man before he opens up the dam, and they are able to call the army to hopefully get some help. Colonel Waxman and Dr. Mengers are introduced in this next scene, who come once they call the military. The colonel and the scientist choose to gaslight Paul and Maggie a little bit by telling them that they don't believe there's piranhas, this story is wild and unbelievable. I'm not totally sure why they do this. We will shortly learn that their top priority is not the protection of the people, but as they're gaslighting them, saying this couldn't possibly be happening, it's only another 3 minutes before they get proof that there are piranhas in the water, and they go, okay, I guess we need to poison them.
Impossible. Look, you're full colonel, right? I assume you can read a map. Here. We are here at the dam, okay? Now look over here and you'll see that there's a stream that feeds into it. Okay, we follow the stream back for about 1/8 of a mile, and you see there's a fork. Take this branch, follow it downstream, and you'll see it empties into the river on the other side of the dam.
Paul is trying to explain to the colonel that, hey, there's another way for these fish to get to the other side of the dam. And everyone's just blowing Paul off. That's absurd. That couldn't possibly happen, when it's clear as day that there is just a part of the river that goes around the dam. But I think that's the idea. The ridiculous military leadership is absolutely an old trope. Of course, they won't listen to the heroes, even if everything they're saying is completely logical. So they try to get Paul and Maggie to play ball with keeping this whole thing quiet. Of course, they refuse, so Colonel Waxman needs them to be quiet. He has them essentially quarantined in this tent where they can't contact anyone to tell them about the piranhas.
It is I who renounce you, and in the name of Satan I place a curse upon you.
You may not have noticed, but Dr. Mengers is actually played by some horror film royalty. We have Barbara Steele of Black Sunday fame, and she's a lot of fun in this role. I could tell she was enjoying herself. She gets a few pretty creepy moments. You're never quite sure what she's thinking. At times, she seems like she's a good person who cared about Dr. Hoke when you find out that she was learning with him. And at other times, she just seems absolutely diabolical and almost takes pleasure in the fact that these piranhas are out there and are going to keep killing people. Overall, she was just having a good time, and I really enjoy seeing her in this movie. So, Paul and Maggie need to escape from this tent. So Paul asks Maggie to find a way to distract the guard so he can get out of there. Now, she does some quick thinking and has her body double flash the guard so Paul can hit him with his only weakness, a heavy blanket. And then they can steal a army truck and get out of there. After escaping, Paul attempts to call Mr. Dumont over at the camp to warn him about the piranhas on the way. And of course, Mr. Dumont yells at him for being a drunk and tells him to stop calling, hangs up on him, and goes back to bed.
What are you talking about? What? Are you crazy? Who is this? Oh, Grogan. I remember you. You're not crazy. You're drunk. No, I don't want to talk to her. I'm sure she's as drunk as you are. You wake me up again, I'll have the cops on you. What? No, you can't talk to your daughter. Sober up, Grogan, and fly right.
And we are officially, once again, in a race against time. Paul and Maggie need to find a way to reach the camp before the piranhas do. So they are zooming down the road in their stolen army truck when they get pulled over by a police cruiser. It turns out it's a little bit hard to talk your way out of a ticket when you're in a stolen army truck. The police officer brings them in, talks to Colonel Waxman, who tells him, hey, you need to lock these two up overnight. Don't let them have outside contact with anybody. So, of course, the police officer does exactly that. So, once again, all the authorities are working against our heroes who are trying to save those kids. It turns out Colonel Waxman is working with this shady developer of this new resort along the river, and they don't want this piranha outbreak to ruin their grand opening, costing them a lot of money. Sounds a little bit like needing to keep the beach open in a resort town, even though there is a shark eating people. Once again, as our two heroes are in jail, we have Maggie to the rescue with another brilliant escape plan this time.
What the hell'd you do to this thing? Trying to crawl through the drain pipe?
Here, her plan is to murder this police officer and take his pants off. Now, she says, don't worry, he's still alive, but I find it a little bit unconvincing. Not to mention, even if he is still alive right there, he definitely needs to get to a hospital as quickly as possible. But hey, we got kids to save. One thing I noticed about and really enjoy in this film is that even side characters have quite a bit of personality. In this scene, we have this kid who runs up to Mr. Dumont pretending to have an arrow through him. Just fun stuff. This kid doesn't even have a single line, but you feel like, I know children like that. You know exactly what he's like. This paints a very vivid picture of the type of world we are seeing and just makes everything feel a little bit more real, even in this completely ridiculous movie. So throughout the second act of the film, since we've been introduced to the actual summer camp, they've been alluding to this swimming race that is coming up that is required for everyone there. Now, Paul's daughter, Susie, it's important to her characterization that she's afraid of the water. There's even a couple of scenes of her discussing with two of the camp counselors about how the water's dangerous and she doesn't want to go in there. Even if you're on an inner tube, they can still get you, she says at one point. So it's finally time for the race, and she hides under a canoe in order to avoid it. Well, at this exact time, Paul and Maggie are zooming towards the summer camp as fast as they possibly can in a stolen police cruiser. And there's a bit of a pattern throughout the film here that Paul and Maggie try to get somewhere as fast as they can and always arrive just a little bit too late. But this sets up for one of the bigger set pieces in the film. Now, as modern audiences, we are mostly conditioned to assume that children are usually safe, even in horror movies. But Joe Dante doesn't pull any punches in this one. During the swim race, the piranhas arrive and they just start chomping on kids. Now, we don't have any sort of body count, we don't know exactly how many they got, but several children definitely died here, and it seems like the majority of them are badly wounded by the piranhas. Now, we also get a little bit of payoff here with Susie overcoming her fear of water as she pulls a raft into the water to go out there to try to save the two kind camp counselors that we've seen her build a bit of a relationship with throughout the movie. She only actually succeeds in saving one of them, but it's a really good character moment for Susie and a very good scene. I also want to draw attention to Mr. Dumont in this scene. Now, I know I talk about his character a lot. He is my favorite character in the movie. You've probably figured out from the way I've talked about him, but he is very clearly comedic relief through the majority of the film. So when you get to this scene, the assumption is, well, the comedy relief is the first one to die, or he's going to run away cowering, but they don't do anything like that. Mr. Dumont even is a little bit heroic here in this scene, where even though he's being bitten by piranhas, he's staying in the water waist deep, getting the children out as fast as he can. He's quite bloody. He stays in the water a long time. I enjoyed that they allowed him to just be a human being here, and they didn't feel the need to pay off his character with any wild, funny moments. In fact, I don't think he has one more line in the movie. We just see him lying there sort of in shock, bleeding from all over, his shirt torn, just upset at what happened. And it's really good. They humanized this silly character a lot. Over at the Riverside Resort, we are finally introduced to the proprietor, Buck Gardner, played by Dick Miller. Now, Dick is in nearly every notable Joe Dante film, and he's perfect casting in this one. He absolutely oozes contempt for every other person on screen. He's a real scumbag, and he's clearly having fun in the role.
Saying for a new resort, nothing's looking very new.
Yeah, well, what the hell do they know? Drop the Swimming Swan is practically a national monument. That little pork has been swimming around the steel pier for more years than I can remember. The rest of the stuff, they just don't make it. I mean, that submarine ride is a piece of Americana.
Yes.
Maybe they never heard of recycling.
I don't know, sir.
Smile, we're going public. Hello, Senator. How are you?
Paul and Maggie are back on the road again after leaving the summer camp, trying to get to the resort as quickly as possible because, of course, once again, nobody will listen to them. And this is the big set piece of the film. This is the part that people think of when they hear the name Piranha. And that's this massive opening of this new resort. There are hundreds of people in the river, along the riverbank, on boats, everything you could possibly think of. We have people water skiing, we have people scuba diving, people just lounging around drinking, people playing rough and splashing. It looks like a great party, and this is going to be an absolute slaughter any minute now. Colonel Waxman and Dr. Mengers arrive at the resort as well, and for some reason I still don't understand. They foresee absolutely nothing going wrong here. They just don't see it as a possibility that the piranhas could show up. Why are they so certain that these piranhas aren't arriving? Colonel Waxman even goes out on a boat. If he had thought there was any possibility of piranhas showing up in the river, you wouldn't think that he'd go out on the water himself. Why is he so confident? This party is an absolute buffet for a horde of genetically engineered super piranhas, and it goes exactly the way you would expect. Slaughter ensues. So my favorite part of this whole huge sequence is this water skier who sees a dead body in the water next to him as he's going by, and he starts wildly waving to the girls driving his motorboat, telling them to first stop or pull over. It's hard to tell exactly what he's screaming, and the girls are just giggling and trying to get him to fall off the back of it. This guy just knows there's something that might kill him in the water. He's sort of screwed no matter what at this point. Some other motorboat, for seemingly no reason, goes between the water skier and his boat he is connected to, and just whips the cord out of the skier's hand, and he falls into the river. I don't think we see him again. I think we just have to assume that he was immediately eaten by piranhas. But then this other boat drives directly into another boat that was stopped. And there's no reason whatsoever that I can find for them to drive into this boat. I rewatched this sequence several times. Nothing happens that should cause them to crash into them, so I just have to assume that it's a woman driver. Colonel Waxman's reaction when he finds out the piranhas are there and they're eating dozens of people is hilarious. Damn it! His annoyance is clearly just that he's gonna lose his investment, and he has no care whatsoever about the human lives being lost. And then this interaction between Buck and his assistant is an absolute classic.
Excuse me, I'm on a phone. I thought I told you not even to say that word.
But the piranhas.
What about the goddamn piranhas?
They're eating the guests, sir.
Bob, I'm gonna have to get back
So
to you.
Waxman is just kicking people trying to climb into the boat he's on back into the water so he doesn't run out of space or the boat doesn't get flipped or something. Just no care whatsoever for the humans being killed. He of course gets his comeuppance when he falls into the water while trying to kick other people off of his boat when he's immediately eaten by piranhas. As per usual, Paul and Maggie arrive a little bit too late to actually do anything after people have already either been eaten or escaped from the river, but at least Paul has a plan moving forward now. They immediately steal a motorboat and take off. So they are going to Paul's old factory, one that was shut down due to the pollution it was causing before. That's why he's currently unemployed. He's going to go in, turn the valve, turn it back on to start polluting the river again, and basically pollute the piranhas to death. So he ties this rope around himself and he jumps into the water and he instructs Maggie to basically gun it in 2 minutes because that's how long he can hold his breath and that's how she's going to get him out of there. He swims in, he manages to eventually turn the valve, although it is a movie, so understandably he struggles and he gets it just at the last second. Piranhas begin eating him while he's still releasing the valve, but Paul heroically pulls through and completely destroys the local ecosystem. He's then pulled through the toxic waste and saved by Maggie.
What the hell are you filming? What the hell are you filming?
However, not all is good as he is left seemingly comatose, whether that's from all of the piranha bites or from getting pulled through the toxic waste, it's unclear. The movie ends on a somber note. We're not sure whether or not the plan was a success, and Paul's survival itself is questionable. But we're left with a bit of a sequel hook, and Piranha 2 exists, so I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess that it wasn't a total success. And then credits roll over a blood-red ocean. I had a lot of fun with Piranha, and I'd highly recommend it to anybody with even a passing interest in 70s or 80s creature features, or just somebody that would be interested in a quality knockoff of Jaws. It's funny, has great characters, an extremely tight script, it can still sell the thrills when it wants to, and it's pretty to look at. I have almost nothing negative to say. As far as creature features go, it's at the top of the food chain. If there's one thing in the world I love more than horror flicks, it's lists and rankings. So I intend to rank every single film that I critique on J-Talks Film on one single list from best to worst. So let's add it to the list. Piranha is currently the best film I have critiqued on J-Talks Film. Now that's only out of 2 movies, but I still want to know, do you agree? Disagree? I'm hoping that this live running list will stoke conversation about every film I've critiqued. Anytime you want to take a look, just go over to my Letterboxd and you can see where all of your favorite films are ranked. And you can always go back and check my critique on anything you see on that list that you may have missed the first time. With that said, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you got something out of this critique. I'll catch you next time.